She was standing in her own kitchen, the same kitchen she had cooked in for 37 years when the word disappeared. Not a complicated word, not a medical term or a foreign phrase. The word was spoon. She needed a spoon to stir her tea, and she opened the drawer where the spoons had lived since the Reagan administration, and her mind simply delivered nothing. No image, no name, just a quiet, terrifying emptiness where a word should have been. She stood there for what felt like an eternity, her hand on the drawer pull, knowing that she knew this word, knowing that she had used it thousands of times, knowing that her 3-year-old grandson knew this word, and yet it was gone. Not on the tip of her tongue, not hiding just out of reach. Gone. When the word finally returned about 90 seconds later, she laughed it off and told herself it was just age. Just another senior moment. Just the natural price of living past 60. But that night, lying in bed with the lights off, she could not stop thinking about the difference between this forgetting and all the other forgettings that had come before. The misplaced reading glasses, the missed appointment, the name that came back after a few seconds. This had been different. This had felt like a door slamming shut inside her own mind. What she did not know, what no one had ever told her, was that her brain had been sending her warning signs for years. Not the dramatic signs that would have sent her running to a doctor, but quiet ones, subtle ones, the kind that could be explained away 100 different ways. And by the time a word like spoon disappears completely, even for 90 seconds, the window for easy intervention is often much smaller than it used to be. But here is the truth that most neurologists wish they could shout from every rooftop. The memory changes that terrify people over 50 are not primarily about neurons dying. They are about specific, measurable, reversible processes that have names and mechanisms and treatments. And if you have been quietly worrying about your memory, if you have been keeping a secret score of the gaps and the lapses and the moments of blankness that feel different from normal forgetting, then what you are about to learn will change everything about how you understand your brain and what you believe is still possible. If you have been searching for a health channel that goes beneath the surface, that does not just list symptoms but explains the actual biology of what is happening inside your body, you have found it right here. Dr. Victor Lang exists to give you the information that most doctors do not have time to share in a 15-minute appointment. Please hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because the conversation you are about to have with yourself about your memory deserves the depth and the honesty that only a place like this can provide. Let me take you inside your brain for a moment. Not with complicated diagrams or medical jargon, but with a picture I want you to hold in your mind. Your brain contains a structure about the size and shape of a seahorse, and its Latin name, hippocampus, actually means seahorse because of that shape. This tiny seahorse is the most important part of your memory system. It is the place where new experiences are transformed into lasting memories. Every conversation you remember, every face you recognize, every fact you learned and retained, your hippocampus was involved in making that happen. And here's what most people do not know. Your hippocampus generates new neurons every single day. This process is called neurogenesis, and it continues throughout your entire life, even into your 80s and 90s. Your brain is not a machine that was built and then slowly fell apart. It is a living garden, and neurogenesis is the growth of new flowers. But just like a garden, your hippocampus needs the right conditions to grow. It needs good sleep, proper nutrition, low inflammation, balanced blood sugar, and manageable stress. Without those conditions, neurogenesis slows down. New memories are not formed as efficiently. Old memories become harder to access, and you start to experience the thing you have been calling aging. But here is the life-changing truth. When you change the conditions, neurogenesis can speed back up. The garden can bloom again. Your memory can improve. Not because you are taking a magic pill, but because you finally stopped starving your seahorse and started feeding it what it actually needs. The first condition your hippocampus needs, and the one that most people over 50 are accidentally sabotaging every single night, is deep sleep. Not just lying in bed for 8 hours, but the specific type of deep, slow-wave sleep that your brain uses to consolidate memories and clear out waste. During deep sleep, Your hippocampus replays the events of your day like a movie, sending the important scenes to long-term storage in your cortex while discarding the trivial ones. If you are not getting enough deep sleep, those memories never get transferred. They simply evaporate by morning. This is why people with untreated sleep apnea who stop breathing hundreds of times per night and never reach deep sleep often complain that their memory feels like a sieve. Everything goes in, but nothing stays. Worse, during deep sleep, your brain activates its own waste clearance system, called the glymphatic system. This system flushes out toxic proteins, including amyloid beta, the sticky substance that forms the plaques of Alzheimer's disease. When you cut your sleep short, or when your sleep is fragmented and shallow, you are not just waking up tired. You are allowing those toxic proteins to accumulate in your brain. One night of bad sleep produces a measurable increase in amyloid beta. A lifetime of bad sleep produces a brain that looks decades older than it should. The single most powerful intervention for most people struggling with memory is simply protecting their sleep. Going to bed at the same time every night, sleeping in complete darkness, avoiding alcohol before bed because alcohol destroys deep sleep, treating sleep apnea if it exists. These are not small changes. They are the foundation upon which every other memory intervention is built. The second condition that your hippocampus depends on is low inflammation. When your body is inflamed, whether from the food you eat, the stress you carry, or the hidden infections you do not know you have, your immune system releases chemical messengers called cytokines. These cytokines travel through your bloodstream, cross your blood-brain barrier, and enter your hippocampus, where they directly suppress neurogenesis. They tell your seahorse to stop growing new neurons. They make your existing neurons less able to change and adapt, a property called plasticity that is essential for learning. And they increase the production of the toxic proteins that drive Alzheimer's disease. The foods that most reliably trigger this inflammatory response are refined sugars, industrial seed oils, processed grains, and anything containing trans fats. The foods that most reliably reduce inflammation are leafy green vegetables, fatty fish, berries, nuts, and extra virgin olive oil. The difference between an inflammatory diet and an anti-inflammatory diet is not subtle. Researchers who have studied this have found that people who follow a Mediterranean-style diet, rich in vegetables, fish, and olive oil, have brains that function as if they are 7.5 years younger than people of the same age who eat a standard American diet. 7.5 years. That is not a supplement. That is not a medication. That is the food on your plate, making a choice 3 times a day, every single day. The third condition that your hippocampus needs is stable blood sugar. Most people think of blood sugar as something that only matters for diabetes. But your brain is the most glucose-hungry organ in your body, consuming about 20% of all the energy you take in despite being only 2% of your weight. And your hippocampus is particularly sensitive to the quality of your blood sugar regulation. When your blood sugar spikes after a meal high in refined carbohydrates, your body releases insulin to bring it back down. Over time, if you are constantly spiking your blood sugar, your cells become resistant to insulin. They stop listening to the signal. This is called insulin resistance, and it affects your brain just as much as your body. In fact, some researchers have started calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes because the brains of people with Alzheimer's show profound insulin resistance. When your hippocampus becomes insulin resistant, it cannot use glucose efficiently. It essentially starves in the midst of plenty. Your memory suffers, your thinking slows, and you experience the fog that so many people attribute to normal aging. The solution is not to cut out all carbohydrates. Your brain needs glucose to function. The solution is to eat carbohydrates that release their sugar slowly, like vegetables, beans, and whole fruits, rather than the rapid-release carbohydrates found in white bread, white rice, soda, juice, and sweets. Every time you choose a sweet potato over a white potato, a piece of fruit over a glass of juice, you are not just making a dietary choice. You are deciding whether your hippocampus gets the steady fuel it needs or the toxic flood that damages it. The fourth condition your hippocampus requires is manageable stress. This is the one that people most want to dismiss because it sounds too soft, too psychological, Too much like something you would hear from a self-help guru rather than a serious discussion of brain health. But the biology of stress and memory is one of the most rigorously established facts in all of neuroscience. When you are under chronic stress, your adrenal glands produce a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is essential for life, but only in the right amounts and at the right times. Your hippocampus is packed with cortisol receptors, more than almost any other part of your brain. When cortisol levels remain high for weeks and months, because you are constantly worried, constantly rushing, constantly unable to relax, those receptors become overstimulated. The result is that your hippocampus literally shrinks. Researchers have measured this. People with chronic stress have smaller hippocampal volumes than people of the same age who are not chronically stressed. Their neurogenesis slows. Their memory consolidates poorly, and their risk of developing dementia increases significantly. The good news is that hippocampal shrinkage from chronic stress is partially reversible. When you bring your cortisol levels back down, your hippocampus can grow again. The most effective ways to do this are aerobic exercise, which burns off excess cortisol and stimulates the production of a brain fertilizer called BDNF. Mindfulness practices like meditation and deep breathing, which directly lower cortisol through the relaxation response, and adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha, which have been shown in multiple clinical trials to reduce cortisol by 20 to 30% in stressed adults. You do not have to eliminate stress from your life, which is impossible anyway. You just have to give your brain enough recovery time to keep your hippocampus from being slowly eroded by the cortisol flood. The fifth condition that your memory system requires is adequate neurotransmitter support. Your brain communicates through chemical messengers, and three of them are particularly important for memory. Acetylcholine is the primary neurotransmitter for learning and attention. It is the chemical that allows you to focus on new information and encode it into memory. Most of the drugs approved for Alzheimer's disease work by increasing acetylcholine levels, but you do not need a prescription drug to support your acetylcholine system. You need choline, the nutrient from which acetylcholine is made. Choline is found in egg yolks, liver, and to a lesser extent in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Most people do not get enough choline in their diet, and the deficiency becomes more significant with age because your body becomes less efficient at producing it internally. Adding 2 or 3 eggs per week or taking a choline supplement if you do not eat eggs can provide the raw material your acetylcholine neurons need to keep your memory sharp. The second neurotransmitter is dopamine, which governs working memory and cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift your attention from one thing to another and hold multiple pieces of information in your mind at once. Dopamine is made from an amino acid called tyrosine, which is found in protein-rich foods like meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. If you have been skipping protein at breakfast and eating only carbohydrates, you are starving your dopamine system every morning. The third neurotransmitter is serotonin, which regulates mood and indirectly supports memory by reducing anxiety and improving sleep. Serotonin is made from tryptophan, the amino acid in turkey, chicken, eggs, and cheese. Supporting all three of these neurotransmitter systems is as simple as eating adequate protein at every meal, getting enough sunlight or taking vitamin D, and managing the inflammation that can interfere with neurotransmitter production. The sixth and final condition that your memory depends on is healthy blood flow. Your brain may be only 2% of your body weight, but it receives 15 to 20% of every heartbeat. That blood brings oxygen and glucose to your neurons and carries away carbon dioxide and waste products. When the blood vessels that supply your brain become stiff and narrow from high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, or diabetes, your brain becomes underperfused. It does not get enough blood, especially the deep structures like the hippocampus that are at the ends of long, narrow cieguan. This chronic underperfusion is one of the most common causes of memory decline in people over 60, and it is almost never diagnosed because doctors do not routinely measure cerebral blood flow. The symptoms of poor brain blood flow are the same as the symptoms of early dementia: forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty concentrating, and a general slowing of thought. The difference is that poor blood flow can often be improved dramatically with lifestyle changes. Lowering your blood pressure to a healthy level, Quitting smoking, exercising regularly, and eating a diet that supports your blood vessels, rich in nitrates from leafy greens and beets, can increase cerebral blood flow by 15 to 20% within a few months. That increase in blood flow translates directly into improved memory and thinking. Your brain is not dying, it is just thirsty. Give it the blood it needs and it will wake back up. I want to tell you about a patient named Eleanor who came to see me when she was 68 years old. She was terrified. Her mother had died of Alzheimer's at 72, and Eleanor was convinced that her own memory problems were the beginning of the same disease. She had started misplacing things constantly. She would walk into a room and forget why. She had stopped going to her book club because she could not remember the plots of the novels they discussed. Her primary care doctor had done a quick memory test and said she was fine, but Eleanor knew she was not fine. She was not the person she used to be. We ran a full set of tests, including blood work, sleep assessment, and a detailed cognitive evaluation. Her vitamin B12 was extremely low, a common problem after 60 because the stomach produces less acid needed to absorb B12 from food. Her sleep study showed moderate sleep apnea, with pauses in breathing that were happening 60 times per hour, destroying her deep sleep and her glymphatic clearance. Her blood sugar, while not high enough to be called diabetes, was consistently elevated after meals, driving up her inflammation markers. And her cortisol, measured through a special 4-point salivary test, was elevated all day long, never dropping to the low levels that allow the hippocampus to rest and recover. Eleanor did not have early Alzheimer's. She had 6 reversible conditions that were all attacking her memory at the same time. Over the next year, she started using a CPAP machine for her sleep apnea, which was difficult at first, but which she eventually came to love because she woke up feeling actually rested for the first time in decades. She began taking sublingual B12, the kind that dissolves under the tongue and bypasses the stomach absorption problem. She changed her diet to stabilize her blood sugar, eating protein and vegetables at every meal and saving sweets for occasional treats rather than daily habits. She started a walking program just 20 minutes after dinner, which helped lower her cortisol and gave her time to process the day. Within 6 months, Eleanor felt like a different person. She went back to her book club and not only remembered the plot, she was the one who pointed out a subtle theme that no one else had noticed. She told me that she had been planning her own funeral and instead she was planning a trip to Italy. The thing she wanted me to share with you, the message she made me promise to pass along, is that she wasted 5 years being afraid of something that was never true. Her memory was not a lost cause. It was just a garden that needed the right conditions to grow again. I share Eleanor's story not to promise that every memory problem can be reversed because some cannot, and it would be cruel and dishonest to suggest otherwise. There are forms of cognitive decline that are not reversible, and people who have them deserve compassionate care, not false hope. But I share Eleanor's story because the vast majority of people who worry about their memory are like her. They have accumulated a half-dozen small problems that are each treatable on their own, and together they have created a fog that looks and feels like something much worse. Clearing that fog does not require a miracle. It requires identifying which of the 6 conditions are affecting you and addressing them one by one. Sleep, inflammation, blood sugar, stress, neurotransmitters, blood flow. These are not mysterious. They are not expensive. They are not beyond your reach. They are the biology of your brain, and they are responding to your choices every single moment of every single day. Right now, as you finish reading these words, you have a decision to make. You can close this video and go back to the story you have been telling yourself, that your memory is just aging, that there is nothing to be done, that you might as well accept the decline and hope it does not get too bad too fast. Or you can decide that you deserve to know the truth, that your brain is still capable of growth, that the forgetfulness you have been experiencing is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, and that the first step toward a better memory is not a supplement or a doctor's appointment, although those may come later. The first step is simply refusing to call it aging anymore. Call it what it is, a signal, a message from your hippocampus that something in your life needs to change. And then scroll down to the comments and tell me what that signal has looked like in your own life. Have you been losing words? Forgetting conversations? Feeling like your thinking has slowed down? Be honest. There is no judgment here. Only the shared recognition that millions of people are going through the same thing, and most of them have been told the same lie that it is inevitable. It is not. And the more of us who share our experiences, the more people will realize that they are not alone and that they do not have to be afraid. Please share this video with the people you love who have been quietly worrying about their memory. Your sister who laughs off her forgetfulness but looks scared when she does it. Your husband who has started writing everything down because he does not trust his own mind anymore. Your friend who stopped driving at night because she got lost on a road she had traveled for 20 years. They need to hear this. They need to know that the garden can grow again. And they need to know that you care enough to send them the information that could change everything. Your memory is not finished. Your hippocampus is waiting. And now, for the first time, you know exactly what it has been asking for.